Okay, well, what I'm actually going to do, there's quite a difference between what has just been presented and what I'm going to present. What I'm going to present is more in an urban area, and it's a little bit more, I hope I don't insult it, but a little bit more concrete because it needs to be speeded up very soon. It's an imminent problem and there needs to be action now. So with that in mind, I'd like to start actually with this presentation. First, a little bit about myself. I'm a little young actually. I just came out of university. I'm a consultant water and spatial development engineer at Woerden. I'm specialized in climate adaptation and integrated water management, and I did that at the Waterveiligheidscongres University. So what have I done? Well, I went to Indonesia for 10 months and I worked and lived there actually on this project. I was actually right beside the program manager of this enormous project, and well, you hear a lot of things when you walk along with such a person. If you, by the way, have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them, because this is quite a controversial plan, and it's nice to just get out those controversial things, and I would like to discuss that with you. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate. For the idea, what is the National Capital Integrated Coastal Development Program about? It's about finding a sustainable solution for the worsening water problems in Jakarta and create additional benefits. So it's actually not only about water, it's also about creating additional benefits. And where can we find those additional benefits? So, well, first a little introduction about Jakarta actually. It's the capital of Indonesia and actually also the political heart of Indonesia. Indonesia itself has about 230 million inhabitants, more or less 10 million. I don't know the exact number, but that's the idea. And well, this is Jakarta. It's situated on the island Java, and well, it's about this area. Well, the city itself, it has 2 million inhabitants, 20 million inhabitants, and it has 30 million inhabitants in 2030. At least that is what is predicted. So enormous growth in the city. And that's actually only about half the size of the province Utrecht. So you can imagine how full the city is. Rainfall is about, well, 2,000 millimeters a year. And in the Netherlands it's about 750 millimeters a year. So you have high intensity rainfall. So flooding from the streets is quite normal. The average yearly temperature is a nice 27 degrees, and the economic, like I said, it's the economic and political heart of Indonesia itself. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to tell you something about the problem, then I will go to the solution. What kind of solutions were there to this problem, and which solution did we choose? Well, then we worked that solution out and we came to a few alternatives. So I'm also going to take you to the alternatives, and then there are several options, which is a little less important. But like I said, first let's go to the problem. First, an old problem. Like you see here, there are mountains here, or actually volcanoes. And there's heavy rainfall in Java and the rest of Indonesia also. And all that rainfall will flow from these mountains down towards Jakarta, into the sea. So there are a few big rivers. And with such high intensity rainfall, you get a real sporadic high river levels and low river levels. So actually flooding in Jakarta has been a problem, has always been a problem. Also when the Dutch came there 400 years ago, they always had problems with flooding from the rivers. So like I said, this is the old city, Jakarta, and it developed to a much bigger size, and now Jakarta is actually off the scale here. But this is how it began, with a Dutch engineered water system about was similar to the Amsterdam water system. Well, and like I said, there are floodings from rivers, which was pretty common. The Dutch also engineered a few flood diversion channels to make sure the floodings were less, but they've also always existed in time. But now there are new problems. Like I said, there's enormous growth, not only economic but also population-wise. And if you see this red area, this is 1972. It was pretty small actually. But now, in 2005, it has already grown to this size. And well, I can't tell you in which numbers it is, but it's a lot. And with that enormous growth also comes change in the hydrograph, or actually the amount of water running through the rivers. And why is that? Well, before you had actually a lot of space for water where it could infiltrate and where it could, and there were also lakes in the city area itself. So water it could go everywhere. But now with the new urbanization, because every person in the new city needs a home, of course, there's nowhere for the water to infiltrate. There's nowhere for the water to go and stay there and be stored for some time before it goes into the rivers. So what is happening? With every rainfall, everything goes into the rivers immediately. And what happens? You get floodings throughout the area. And river floodings in Jakarta are very common now, and it's actually rainy season now. So I can imagine that, or actually in January, but I can imagine that people are currently stuck in traffic when it's pouring down with rain. So this is actually an image. This is one large roundabout. It's actually in the center of Jakarta nowadays, where you can see what the problems are. You can drive if you're a Bentley or Rolls Royce, and it gets flooded pretty fast. So actually the roads become waterways. That's actually the current situation. And well, this is normal in rainy season that you have such river on the roads. It's becoming kind of normal for the Indonesians. Although they really want the government to do something about it. It's getting normal, but they really want the government to do something about it. Other problems. Urban sprawl. So with so many people coming to a city, what they do is they build their own. And on which area? Well, they build it on the riverside areas, where there's space. And you can see that they put their houses on little poles, like they call it. In the Netherlands that would be like climate adaptation, but here it's actually necessity. If you want a house, you have to build on the rivers actually. And you can see major pollution also, a lot of garbage in those rivers, which also increases the intensity of the floodings, because the water also, with all this garbage, has nowhere to go. Water quality. With 60 million people in such a small space, water quality becomes a major issue. About 2% nowadays of Jakarta actually has sewerage. So 98% of the water directly flows into the rivers, which means you have black rivers all the way through Jakarta. Well, some places might be a little cleaner, but this is a striking image which we also show to the government officials. And well, it's quite intense to see somebody actually swimming in sewerage. So a lot of diseases also, health risks. And like I said, mobility. It's also a major problem. This morning I was stuck in traffic, but it was nowhere near traffic how it gets to Jakarta. To give you an example, one day I was stuck in traffic for 3 hours while I only live 7 kilometers from work. So I did 3 hours for 7 kilometers. For the people wondering why don't you walk, well, you don't walk in Jakarta because that's, if you want to get diseases or want to fall into a pit or something, that's not a good idea. And this is a little image from Google Earth. These areas are actually green, but that means that you're driving 30 kilometers an hour. In the red areas, you're actually standing still for 2 hours. And also environmental degradation. Well, with the sprawl and growth of the city and water quality degradation, and you get environmental degradation. So there are mangrove forests all around the area. They have to find difficult. This is actually planned to grow new mangroves along the coast. And also a major issue for Jakarta is water supply. They need to provide water for 60 million and 30 million in 2030. They need to supply that water. And where can you get it? Well, the rivers are heavily polluted. The rivers upstream are also already being used. So you pump the water from the ground, from the soil, so groundwater. So this man is actually pumping his water from the soil. And they're getting by with their water supply, but with the enormous growth, it's getting difficult. And now the alarming thing, subsidence. In 2007, there was suddenly a different kind of flooding. The Indonesians were used to flooding from the rivers, like they told, but suddenly the water entered from the sea. There was a high tide, and a large part of North Jakarta was actually flooded. And, well, that was strange. Flooding from sea was not normal in Indonesia. So, why? And this is actually why. This is North Jakarta, and you can see here 18 centimeters a year. And in this area, 12 centimeters a year. To give you an idea, in the Netherlands, we get scared with sea level rise of about, I used to say, 1 centimeter a year. So more, probably a little less, but we get scared of that. And we improve our dikes, and that's alarming. But here it's 18 centimeters for an area where 4 million people live. So enormous problem. And we modeled the subsidence for North Jakarta. And here you can see a few lines. And the green lines is actually the most probable scenario. And you can see that in 2100, they could go down 7 meters downward. So, well, that's a major issue. This is a seawall along the coast, because they built a seawall little because they had tide. And, well, in 2007, they had a flooding on this area. In 2013, it's this high. And this was the situation in 2013. People standing on the dam and measuring, well, we don't know, is it like 10 centimeters below the wall, or is it like 3 centimeters below the wall? It doesn't actually really matter. It's a real problem. And this was in 2013, or 14 actually, and it was right along the edge. So maybe 2015, we don't know. So keep an eye on the news about it, because maybe North Jakarta will flood again from the sea. Because I'm afraid it's this man. Or actually all his colleagues also. But it's a groundwater extraction. What they do is they pump all the water out of the soil, and the soil starts to subside. And this process, like you saw, can go on for, well, decades.
When I was there was a problem with the water supply, and there's no water supply. The only interesting thing was that the residential palace still had water. Then also not only the poor guy there who is pumping it out, the president even himself is pumping it out.
Okay, so everybody is pumping the water actually. Probably the water I got from the shower was also pumped water, I'm afraid. But with 60 million people, you just need the water, so pumping just continues. 20, at this moment, 28 million? Okay, the Dobetech area, urbanized area. Well, 28 million and while growing enormously. Well, Jakarta is not the only city with this problem. Tokyo experienced major subsidence, but they were able to make it stop the subsidence by stopping the groundwater extraction. Other cities are also like Manila, Jakarta itself obviously, Ho Chi Minh City, Bangkok, and well, just for your idea, the Netherlands are slowly sinking too. At a slower rate for a different reason, but we are sinking too. The relation between groundwater extraction and subsidence is shown here. This is Tokyo. You can see here that they stopped pumping out the water and the ground levels slowly rose again. And you can see that the subsidence stopped at that point. The impact of subsidence. So what is actually happening? If this is the sea, and this is the land is subsiding. So the sea is coming in. But the problem is not only the sea, the problem is also the rivers. The rivers are used to free flowing into the sea, and it's not possible anymore because the sea levels are rising. So more flooding not only from the sea, but also increased flooding from the rivers. So those are two problems. And the city is sinking 3 to 5 meters below sea level in 2030, and that is in the most, in the area where the subsidence is the worst. In other areas it's a little slower, but just to give you an idea. So the river mounts with new sea level and an enormous pumping system is required to keep Jakarta dry from flowing from rivers and the sea. So what is actually needed? A 7-meter high dike along all the major rivers and enormous pumping lanes within the cities. Well, with that in mind, all these issues in Jakarta, the SICD started actually with the objective to provide safety from flooding for the long term for both the sea and major rivers and support the socio-economic development of North Jakarta. Mouthful. But actually what we're saying is provide that safety, but make sure Jakarta is able to develop further. And to give you an idea which area can go below sea level, it's the whole blue area. And the presidential palace, which also is pumping drinking water, which also is part of the problem, is about here. My office was here, so I was also at risk. Okay, so I talked to you about the problems, now we're going to the solutions. So, how can we go to a solution? One solution is evacuate North Jakarta. Evacuate 4.5 million people living in the North Jakarta area and have $103 billion in damage. Economic losses and loss of space to work and live. Harsh, but it is an option. It is an option to move out of that area and just let the water come in. And that's this area. But the government told us no option. So another solution. So try to provide space for those rivers in the city itself, and improve and build your dikes 7 meters high along the rivers, and create an enormous dike just along the coast. That could be an option. It will look a little bit like this. You have enormous lakes, and along every river you need really high 7-meter dikes. And why these large lakes? Well, with all the water coming in, you need time to pump it out. So you need storage, you need retention. And the larger your retention is, the easier or the smaller your pumps can be. So these lakes, the larger you make them, the smaller pumping size you need. And the government told us no option. And why isn't it an option? Because it's still here, 4.5 million people live here. So you cannot just move them away. You cannot just evacuate. Well, this is actually also an evacuation. Only then it's well, thought about. So another solution is retention outside the existing city. So what you do is that retention lake, you don't create it within the city, you create it outside the city. You create an enormous pumping lake as a retention, and your pumping station can be smaller and easier to maintain, and the system will be more robust that way. And that will look a little bit like this. So you create a dike along in the bay of Jakarta, and you create an enormous retention basin. Well, the government told us this is too expensive. We're not going to do this. So, at that point we were kind of lost. Okay, this is too expensive, so what can we do? So we actually went from coastal defense to coastal development program. Can the closure of the bay provide capital with a new economic opportunities? Is it possible to generate profits with the creation of that dam? And is it possible to integrate multiple problems within the city into this master plan we're designing? All those other problems we talked about, so also traffic and water quality and all those issues, can we put it into one solution? And we started thinking about land reclamations. Land reclamations at this moment is a big well, money maker in Indonesia. And well, it might be a solution, because building in deep water, building the dam that far into sea is really expensive. It's about 18 meters deep, and with the amount of sand you need, which isn't really available in the nearby area, it will become really expensive. Also, you need an iconic design of the reclamation to really attract all those large investors. But at the same time, you also want to provide benefits for all the citizens of Jakarta. So, we had also a designer, a landscapes architect, and he started designing. He looked at the shapes of the coast, and you see all these convex shapes, and he started drawing, and this was actually one of his first drawings, and he was like, oh, looks a little bit like a bird. And it's a coincidence, but the national symbol of Indonesia is a Garuda, which is a bird. And well, from that point we started designing. We also saw additional opportunities. We saw, well, if you create such a bird-like figure into the bay, you can also close a ring roads in the system. You can make a national highway all the way to Sumatra. You create economic development also for the city, which is shouting for additional space to develop. Well, you have also a retention lake with fresh water that could provide a fresh water supply. And you could revitalize the coastal area which is currently present. Because if you have the Garuda and you have the inner city, you also develop the area in between. Well, and there are also possibilities for recreation and tourism. Well, with those ideas, we went to government officials and we told them, well, this might be a solution, how would you like this, and what are your ideas?
Before you go on to this part, you're only talking about solutions of managing the water. As no one thought about using the rainwater to stop the usage of groundwater, because they get like 200 liters per square meter a year.
So if I understand it right, your question is...
Yeah, well, there's a lot of rainwater there, and they pump a lot of groundwater to use, but they get an awesome amount of water from the sky. There are no plans to use that water in any way, or yes. It seems simpler that way. Definitely.
And this is actually also a little bit the conclusion, which I'm all the way to the end. But it's not really an if. It's not a you can do that or you can do that. You actually need to do both. You need to take measures within the city, because you still need to provide 28 million people with water. And you don't do that in an instant. So until 2030, they will still be using groundwater. But good question. Yeah.
As a matter of it, is what you said, just the force possibility, the force alternative, to make sure that the subsidy.
Definitely.
That's the whole point. That might be the cheapest.
That might be the cheapest one to stop groundwater abstraction now. That would be the quickest draw. But with the speed it's going now, and it's not possible. You need to do both.
We did know that we did need to stop the extraction for already 20 years, and it's still continues.
Yeah.
Non-stop.
So what you said is they're already trying to stop it for 20, 30 years because they've always known that there was a little subsidence was going on. And we can change it in an instant. So subsidence will surely happen.
And we don't know when it stops.
And we don't know when it stops also. Well, this is the first design. Worked out design actually from our talks with the government officials. They really liked it and we really go on. And they were really happy with it. Or at least we were really happy with it. But also this one is far too expensive. And that's where we go to alternatives. So with those ideas in our head, how can we develop our major solution into a solution which is not too expensive and can actually achieve our goals? To give you an idea, we did some economic analysis also on the development of the Garuda. If you build this, you have a net present value, which is actually the economic worth value of this development. The investment wouldn't pay out. It's 14 billion in debt to construct this. So we went a little smaller. We did another analysis, and we went $3 billion US. So we went in the right direction. And finally, we came to a smaller birdline figure, which could actually achieve what we wanted: the construction of that sea dike, the development of that retention lake, and also development for the city of Jakarta. This was $4 billion US in profit, if you want to say that. And also, you also have a lot of other benefits which aren't included in this figure. You also have the benefits with the transportation. The water quality needs to be improved with this version, actually. And you also close ring roads in this area, which improves congestion. And you can lower the water table in the retention lake so that rivers can freely flow into the retention lake, and floods also in the city itself will be reduced. Not disappeared, but reduced. So if we take that into thought, we go to the phasing and engineering. I myself am not an engineer, so I've heard that there are a few civil engineers here. So I'm afraid I'm not able to provide you with the exact civil engineering details, but I'll try to provide you with some. First phase. Improve the existing seawall along the coast. Because they're already subsiding and they're only this far away from again being flooded. So they need to do that now. And they've also already started with the construction of this first phase. And we hope that they will continue with the entire coastal area. Second one is constructing the closure dam on the west side and the creation of this pumping lake. Why the west side? Because this area is sinking the fastest. And why do it in two phases? Why not just do it in one stretch? Though there's a major port here. And this port is really important for the economic development of Jakarta. It's actually their most important port, Tanjung Priok. So see the construction of the closure dam on the east side, with also development of a retention dam lake on that side. And like I said, action is needed now. The focus is currently on phase A of the program. With the first measure is to slow down the subsidence. So stop extracting the water. They need to start implementing those plans now, and they need to develop also alternative water sources. So upstream they can develop water sources, or like you said, you can do also with the enormous rainfall there is in Jakarta, you can also harvest that water in the city itself. That was not part of the NCICD master plan, but it is something which we urged that has to be done. They also need to accelerate sewage and sanitation plans. What happens if you close off the bay, all those polluted rivers with really a lot of pollution in them they will collect in this area. So you will create a black lagoon, a stinking pit. So they need to start with a water supply and a sewerage and sanitation plans. And there are already plans. The Japanese developed them together with the Indonesian government, but those plans need to be accelerated. At this moment, we are also helping the Indonesian government with accelerating these plans. Because you cannot close off that bay without improving the water quality in the rivers. That's actually, how do you call that? It's a necessity. And also improve drainage in the city. A lot of soil particles go into the water from the volcanoes, and those clog up all the drainage systems, and also the rivers. So you need to improve the entire drainage system in the entire Jakarta area and maintain them also. So it's not digging out the current soil which has deposited there. No, you need to continue on constantly digging out that water. So improve drainage. And prepare for phase B, construction of the dam and the reclamation. Some figures for the dam itself. The pumping lake will be about 90 square kilometers in size, and that's about the Haringvliet area. I don't know if you people know the size of the Haringvliet, but it's about 80 square kilometers. Fluctuation will be about 2.5 meters. The more fluctuation you allow in the lake, the less pumping capacity you need. So if you have a fluctuation of 1 meter, you will need larger pumps, and because they need to pump out the peak water coming from the rivers. For now we're aiming at 2.5 meters fluctuation, and that requires a pumping capacity of 730 cubes per second. That would be the biggest pumping station, drainage station actually in the world. Currently in New Orleans you have about 600 cubic meters per second. This morning I did the calculation again, it was about 680. Just to give you an idea, it's enormous, the pumping capacity which is required. Safety, for now it's being designed with the safety of 1 in 10,000 years until 2080, also depending on the rate of the subsidence.
So do you mean the flood risk here?
The flood risk, yes. Yeah. Well, it's mostly for the design. Yes, it's for the design of the major closure dam. The note for the construction of A, that's lower. The safety. Yeah.
In the area.
Yeah. It will probably become more safe and unusable at one point. Social environmental impact, then I will go to conclusion. Positive, you have water safety for for a really long time because it's a real robust design of the dam. You will have clean drinking water in the retention basin itself. You will have a clean sea because all the polluted water is either being cleaned or being maintained in the retention itself. And you will be able to have socio-economic development in the North Coast region because there is an opportunity to develop. And when there's an opportunity, people start developing. Now with the substance of North Jakarta, you would be a little dumb to go and invest a lot of money in that area. I'm sorry?
The fishing community have to move outside.
Yeah, the fishing, that's the negative, because there are also major negative things. The lake will go from salt to fresh, which will entirely change the environmental situation in the bay. You will have, therefore, you will also have loss in mangrove forests because mangrove forests are resistant to salt water, and if there's suddenly plants which can grow there which aren't resistant, you will have a competition and the mangrove forest will lose that competition. So you will have a loss in mangrove forest, you will have a loss in fishing area. Inhabitants along the coast will also be impacted, especially those fishing communities. What we have developed now in our master plan is that those fishing communities will have space to create their fishing communities on the Garuda itself. 17% will be social housing and will also be reserved for the fishing communities. But those are the plans at least. Well, and then you have several options. It's a little less important. You can construct an entirely new city which is green, climate friendly, improves social inclusion, and has modern transportation for really good train, for example. But these are options. Conclusions for this development. You will have saved, with the construction of this dam and this reclamation, you will have saved $200 billion of damage. Or avoided, actually. Saved is a good word. You will protect 1.5 million jobs in the North Coast area, and you will also create 500,000 new jobs. Because with the development of that Garuda, a lot of new jobs, a lot of people are required. So, and on the Garuda itself, you can also house a lot of people and have increased jobs. Like I said, 70% of the area is reserved for social housing, long distance connection between West and East Java, a port development with good connection to the hinterland. It's currently a big issue. Tanjung Priok, which is their major port, cannot get rid of a lot of their supplies because there isn't a good connection to the hinterland. With this solution, with this option, will create a solution for that. I saw a question in the back. Yeah?
The jobs that are created, on what term are they? Because when the project is finished, I think maybe only some people can stay and maintain the project, and other people have to search other jobs.
Yeah, so it's partly temporary jobs needed with the construction of the entire area, and their part are jobs which will remain. But this development, you will not be able to build this in 5 years, you will not be able to build it in 10. This will be 30 years, 45, who knows, depends on the economic situation in Indonesia as well. So it will be a long-term development.
So from many generations?
Well, at least for one, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Well, and also it would be fun if you fly to Indonesia and you land on Soekarno-Hatta Airport. You will actually see this iconic figure of this Garuda, this national symbol of Indonesia, when you fly over. So it can be the Eiffel Tower or the World Trade Center or whatever you will for Indonesia, which for a rising country can be really important. So I hope I hope you understood a lot of the story. And are there any questions to this controversial plan?
How how were you able to, after your study, how were you able to find a job with this company to be able to go to Indonesia?
So this was for my internship. I prolonged my internship there because it was such a major project and I learned so many new things. So it was actually 10 months of internship. Also, my girlfriend went with me, so she got a job there also. So it was actually perfect for me to continue with the internship. And after I came back to the Netherlands, they gave me a job right away, actually. So yeah, internships can be important when finding a job.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, phase A is under implementation, and they're designing and calculating now. But phase B, they're not really, still no real designs are being made, and the program is not being continued. Currently, the Dutch government is actually waiting for the Indonesian company to start up a development company, which is quite difficult, by the way. But we're waiting for them to start up this development country, and after that we will support them again with the development of this entire development.
The last question?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, are there any wishes of local parties taken into account in this plan, or is it just a Dutch plan?
Well, actually this plan was designed together with the Indonesian government. Like you saw, what the no option things actually comes from them. So together with the Indonesian government we designed this, and also we have another program alongside of this, and it's a capacity building program, and also there discussions are being done. However, with such a big city as this, it's not like we sometimes do in the Netherlands, that we come together and start designing together. That's not really an option here, but we try to take into account all those factors. However, also other forces are at play in Indonesia, and it's difficult to steer such a process.
Okay. Oh, yes, the last one, the really last one.
The people that would have been on the coast and now have lost their coastal sort of location, are they compensated for the fact that there's something new that's blocking them from the sea, or?
Well, at this moment in phase A, it's really a project actually of the Indonesian government. So we are not making relocation plans, and we are not the thriving force behind what the Indonesian government is doing at this moment. However, we did advise them to, when you do this phase A, develop in such a way that the community actually profits from the development also. So what we suggested is, instead of building your phase A dam, that's the current seawall, directly on the current seawall, build it 20 meters in front of the current seawall, and build social housing and create a livable area. So in that sense, we advised them to take that into account.
Thank you very much. Also one question, sorry. Yeah. The phase A, will you think that it will ever finish? Will it ever be such a clean river that such a retention area can be built? Or?
Again, the development is not up to me, or also not even up to the advisors. We are only able to advise. Do I think whether they'll succeed? I believe so, yes. And the reason why is that I'm afraid there's no real other choice. And so we advise them on to how to develop this, how to do this. And if they don't, well, it's up to them.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the inspired presentation.
Thank you. Yeah.